Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'll get started, so please find a seat and get settled in. This session is History of Policing the African American Community. What do you do?
Good. Everybody doing it? How's everybody doing today? How's everybody doing today? Thank you. We're going to start out like that. Just like I said, I'm Charles Woody Jr. I am the owner of this 146 Police Professional, which was born out of several different things that happened in my life. 100%, this law enforcement stuff cannot get better if law enforcement officers don't understand the communities that they're policing in. And to understand that, you have to understand the whole history of what it looks like. So when I do these presentations, that's mainly what I'm talking about. Normally it's going to be about a 4-hour presentation to police departments, to other agencies and things like that. Here we kind of condense it down. And then in this one I also add a little bit about the retention and the recruitment for your police departments. If your police department numbers are low, I'm going to go over some leadership things that could or couldn't help. That's just what we're going to kind of do. So I always like to start out with explaining why and how I think that I have a first-hand knowledge of all sides of defense of this issue. As you can see, this is going to represent me in this scope. I am biracial, so I understand what it's like to be treated as black. I understand what it's to be looked at as not being black enough from the black community, and I understand the racism on both sides. I understand and have seen racism on the white side of the family, on the black side of the family. So as far as race goes, that communication thing, I've seen firsthand, and I've witnessed firsthand. And usually the whole thing is people just don't want to understand each other, all right? So I had that unique perspective where I actually lived both sides of those fences. That little group up in the corner there, that's me. That's my crew. That's the boys that I grew up with. Because I did grow up in an urban environment. And within that crew, there's many challenges, right? So I would say there's about 5 of us in that picture. You can add another 5 on, and probably all but 3 of us ended up in state prison during that 1980s crack era in the community. So essentially it was just all about avoiding and not getting in trouble, navigating through the community, and just being lucky. And for me, myself, I stayed in some kind of programming, right? So I have a true gift in this room today. As I am sitting out there, a gentleman who was a huge part of my life. If I took 10 people in my life, this gentleman actually is one of those 10 people. And I haven't seen this man probably since I was a teenager. And I'm going to ask him to stand up. Riyadh Al. Stand up. This man right here was a SUNY Binghamton student, and I was a young knucklehead running around the community. And he was part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program, which means as a college student, he took his every Saturday, and he took that Saturday to try to instill in a few of us another way of life, seeing things that we didn't see. For me, that was a huge part of my life because it took me from them streets, took me to a college campus, and even though we really just wanted to go there for the good meal, we knew Al was going to take us to the DJ booth up there, and we were going to go to the radio station, and we were going to do all these great things. But it's people like Al who I didn't realize had done that much influence into me until I got older. But it's just this man taking time out of his life to give back, right? So I think that's, those things are important. So Al, I love you, bro, man. Because trust me, identifying us, me, identifying those who are on that center line, all right? I'm going to tell you with 100% certainty, when my boys was busting heads and they were out there doing that stuff, I ran with them every minute. I just didn't have the neck to do that stuff. But we were in the park all day together. But people like Al, the Boys and Girls Club, the Urban League Teen Center, I always tried to stay in some kind of extra programming just enough to keep me out of the mix. But when them dudes went out and did what they did and they came back, I sat there and drank, smoked weed them all night long and just lived that life. I just didn't go over that line. I'm also very thankful that guns weren't prevalent back when I was growing up like that. We did some fighting back then, but the guns weren't the way they are now. I can tell you with some kind of certainty, I may or may not be here right now, just with our mindset. That's just how it was, right? My snug people, please stand up. You are the most important people in this room. You have the most influence going forward in our community. Everybody, please give these people a big round of applause. It's people like you that are going to identify that person like me and keep them on another path, all right? Then the fourth part of my life obviously has the badge there. I didn't join the Binghamton Police Department until I was 30 years old. And that was just a product of not really wanting to be part of a police department. That's just not what we did, right? We were treated very badly in that neighborhood by police, so it was just never an option. It was nothing I ever thought about doing. And I had one gentleman who always kept on me about it, and I was always like, nah, this is not kind of what we do. We're never going to do that. And I had a decent job working at the hospital as a mental health evaluator, so it wasn't like I wasn't doing all right. The problem being, I was still in this mindset here with this crew, still in that mindset. I wasn't trying to break out of that. This is just what we didn't do. But as I got about that age of 28, 29, 30, I started looking at life a little bit differently, right? I always like to think to myself now, self-admit, that I didn't grow up until I was about 28 years old, period. I might have thought I was grown up, but I wasn't. And I had a wife, I had a kid, I had a good job, but I was very immature. But about that age of 30, as this gentleman's talking to me, he says one thing to me that really set me off. And he said, you know that you can get a pension from this job. Money for the rest of my life? And literally, when he said, after you work 20 years, you can get a pension, I went down and signed up for that test with about 1 or 2 days left to be able to sign up for that test. I did well on the test, I got hired, and then I was in law enforcement the next 20 years. The day I walked into that police department, I said I would be there for 20 years. I got hired on May 4th, 1998. I retired May 4th of 2018, to the day. Out the door, with my pension. The whole thing about that is we have to do a better job about identifying need for law enforcement purposes, right? Because even though I say that's not something we did in the neighborhood, doesn't mean that there wasn't a piece of me that maybe wanted to do it. I don't know. Eventually I did, so it must have been somewhat true. The problem is coming out of this mindset of this group here and breaking away took some real doing for me, right? So I lost a bunch when I did that, right? I lost some of my people like that because they couldn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. But I was just trying to make my life better. And it ended up being the best decision I ever made. Economically, it gave me stuff that I never knew existed. I never lived in anything but apartment buildings. I never lived in anything that was extra nice. Didn't take trips to Disney, didn't do things like that. And this job afforded me to do everything that I could do for the kids that I never got. But it's a challenge to break out of that mindset, right? So you have to do a better job at identifying. So I truly understand what it's like to be all four of those things. And not many people can say that, right? Because you're either black, you're either white. You could run like that in the streets, or you can be in law enforcement. But there's not many people that are going to have all four of those aspects. But that can get mighty challenging at times. So in my career, right about 2016, the temperature in this country started changing, right? Now, I don't care what politically you think or things like that, but when Donald Trump came on the scene, all of a sudden, people that you thought you knew forever started showing how they really thought, right? Now, I'm in this department, and I've got a lot of good friends there. And I can be working one day, and I can hear everybody beating up that current administration at the time, which would have been Barack Obama, and obviously law enforcement is generally going to be a little more conservative. So I would be at work all day, and I'd hear people knocking him and carrying on with those antics, and then I'd get home, and I got my boys calling me, and oh, this cop's this, and this cop that, and you have to understand, it's not what it seems inside of those walls of police departments. It isn't just a bunch of rampant racism going on like people tend to want to believe. Are there racists in the department? Yes. Is it like you think it is? No. All right? So for me, the whole world, right about 2016, just started spinning, trying to fend off all four parts of that, right? And trying to live in that existence and understanding everything there. And I just came to a point where I got exhausted. I was just done with law enforcement, so I was ready to go after my next 2 years were up. So what do? Remember I told you I retired May 4th, 2018. What I didn't tell you was April 1st of 2018, I already had my condo set up in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was out. And I had a nice job down there, and I liked what I was doing. I was working for American Airlines. And as I'm sitting there one night on the news, I see George Floyd laying on that ground, and this cop just straight murdered him. Period. Now I'm mad. I'm yelling and screaming at the TV. I'm mad at the police on how we're policing. I'm mad at the community and some of the reactions there. I'll be the first one to tell you there's nothing wrong with protest, but there's a proper way to do it, right? You can't go busting up your own communities and their businesses and everything like that because you want to protest. People make the changes. You have to protest. I understand that. If people didn't protest, this wouldn't be changed. So I get that, but there is a proper way to do that. So I was a little upset at that. So I started engaging back here with the city of Binghamton a bit, just trying to figure out, like, I can start somewhere. There's something that I have to be able to do with this. I must be of some use to try to do something. And I know I can't change the world, but I'm going to damn sure try. But I'm going to start in my old community that I just left 3 years prior to. Because if I can't do it there, then where can I do it? So I was invited back to, and some of it became a product of the New York State, kind of say everybody has to rewrite how they treat the community and come up with plans and things like that. So as part of that, I came back and I was made the director of recruiting and the community outreach for the city of Binghamton's police department. And I did that there for about 1.5 years, and now I do the same thing at the county. So right now, one of my main jobs is the director of recruiting and community engagement for Boone County, right? So I'm hiring all the corrections officers, and I'm hiring all the road deputies up there. So slowly but surely, I'm just trying to make things better. So I have a very good training director in the city of Binghamton whose name was Bob Charpinski. And he had asked me as some part of the procedural justice trainings that were going on now if I could find somebody to bring in. So one of the first persons I thought about was one of my dudes, God rest his soul, passed away with cancer. His name was Randy. And Randy was a dude that was just like me in the group, except he was busting heads. He was out there hustling like nobody's business. And Randy got brought in probably about when he was 18 years old. He got brought in by the Special Investigations Unit for the City of Binghamton. And he didn't have anything on him. And because he didn't have anything on him, the officer there, under no uncertain terms, told him, we know what you're doing, you're going to get caught. You're going to go to prison. And Randy walked out of there, and when he walked out of there, he walked into Junior College of Albany. He walked out of Junior College of Albany, and he went to Temple University. He walked out of Temple University and went to Rutgers University. All because one police officer literally took a little bit of time and told him what his path was, let him know how far he was or close he was to being caught, and just basically helped change his life. And Randy would always say how this officer changed his life. So I thought he was a unique one to bring in to talk to officers, right? Just simply because there is a role for the police officers there, and it does impact the community. Now, after that was done, what Randy was doing is actually when he would come in, he would speak for like 45 minutes and just basically tell officers like, okay, the community at large does like police officers. We just don't like some of you that just aren't doing right, plain and simple, right? So what we found was what Randy was doing in 45 minutes is what the procedural justice class was doing in 8 hours. And it was crazy because Randy and the training director had never even spoke about the material. So he's just looking at me like, how does he do this? I got to do this for 8 hours. He did it in 45 minutes. I'm like, because he's real life, right? Like he is real life. He's living this. So it's easy for him. So after that one was done, he said to me, we got to figure out something for the next in-service. So I said, well, I don't know. What am I going to do? So as I'm trying to sit there and think, my whole mind is just telling me, what's the major issue? So I'm going to write something for police officers. And I understand all of the stuff behind me. So my thinking was, man, these police officers have to understand why the black community just don't trust them. There's no equity built up here in this. And how did we get here? Well, as I start to think about it, you get there in 1619 when they start bringing people to this country. There's no other place to start. So I knew in this field that could be a little bit of a tough challenge to talk about. So I went to him and said, listen, I got something for you, man, but it's going to be salty. And he looked at me and said he didn't care. That's what you need. You need that person in your department that says, I don't care. Teach it. It needs to be taught. And that's what I did. So I put this together. I put this little bit together of understanding. Now, I don't generally know if you like Miss Letitia James or not. Some people do, some people don't. I'm not really concerned about that. But what she said is true. If you read it, she's telling you, we need to talk about this 100%. Has to be talked about. Has to understand why this community reacts the way they do every time something happens. Then you have Mr. Gary McCarthy, who did some things in Chicago and things like that from a whole other perspective. Is it going to play? Somebody. No, I'll just talk about it. Don't worry about that. I apologize.
You know what I mean? Like, suppose it has to be second. I bring it up. Our thought is enough stuff. Right, so that's what I think about. But I'm not just saying.
He said he was going to get the IT guy. I thought he was the IT guy.
Right? So it tends to like.
That was quick. That's all you got? All right, thank you.
Yeah, so he's up around we're lost most of them.
We'll come back to it.
Guns go back.
Right.
That was back then.
When they got that grant.
I don't know. Unless it's expanded, because it's consumed something else, you gotta get this down.
So,
This can't be a problem.
and that's the thing. I don't know if someone else did it, or someone else did it statewide, but I know DCJS had it. So I don't know if they were patterning it after the Giles did it, or if Giles adopted it ever since. I don't know.
It wasn't Giles, it was basketball.
Got it.
Because Giles had peacekeepers.
Got it.
Actually, Giles had peacekeepers. Snuck in.
But he ran that too, and it was all.
They were all part of the same.
Yeah.
Route stuff.
And he's fine.
There are no political solutions for practical problems. We can't engage in a game of look at the squirrel. Every action has a reaction. And while we're spending this time trying to fix the police, I love the saying that we're going to fix police-community relations. We're going to reestablish police-community relations. Well, you can't reestablish something that didn't exist in the first place. Because I want you to think about the history of African Americans in this country. 400-year history, maybe longer, that started with slavery, went to black codes. From there, Jim Crow. And after that, segregation. I can't believe, as I stand here, that segregation existed in my lifetime. I think it was 1964. It's when the Civil Rights Bill was signed. That narrative of distrust is well earned by the police because we were the ones, the white police officers, who were enforcing those racist laws. They were laws, ladies and gentlemen, that were on the books, and we enforced them. So if you can reverse 300 years, 400 years of history, then you can reestablish trust. The solution lies in first identifying the problem.
And we know the problem. So for me, what was going to be my problem? What do you think people are automatically going to say when you start going way back in history and teaching? What are these officers going to say now? Right?
I didn't do that. It's got nothing to do with me.
And what else are they going to say? Long time ago. You guys see me? I moonwalk a little bit, right? Let me tell you something about history. When I was born, it was illegal for my parents to be married down south. Think about that. How do I look right now? Do I look like somebody that would be existing and around when you had situations like that in that country, in this country? That's not that long ago. It's not that long ago. So I always try to bring this back to just look at me. I'm telling you, when they're writing laws and when they're writing things, about voting rights and making laws and these Jim Crow laws and all that stuff was going on when I was born. The Housing Code Act was written when I was 2 years old. It's not that long ago. So it worked because I got people to understand that it wasn't that long ago. But I also think it was important to take a raw look at law enforcement and the way it was used in the community and the way sometimes it's still being used. I like to talk about my man Cecil up here, him and the other guy. Now he's a sheriff, and this is a gentleman from the old Mississippi burning movie, who decided one time when these gentlemen who were just trying to get people to register to vote on a summer job down south in Mississippi, all they were looking to do was to get people registering to vote. The sheriff, once again, he's a law enforcement officer, pulls them over. After he pulls them over, he takes them to the jail. He calls up the rest of his crew, lets them go, and after he lets them go, he restops them, right? After they're restopped, they're killed by law enforcement officers and others. I tell people, when you're sworn in after the police academy and you walk across the stage, whether you like it or not, your badge has that on it, as did mine. That comes with the territory. You have to understand, we do have this. How can you not remember that? If you're in law enforcement, you have to understand that this existed. This is just one of many stories. Just one. The Emmett Till case. I love showing the Emmett Till case to my people because they have to understand it wasn't necessarily a law enforcement officer that killed Emmett Till, but it's what they didn't do. You had a 14-year-old kid whistle at somebody, and you had grown-ass adults show up in the middle of the night to take this kid from his bed. And all that was going on when they took him out of there was silence from the family because they couldn't call the police. They couldn't call for help from their 14-year-old nephew being abducted by some guy in the community. Now what the officers do after that, the sheriff in that county decided to do? To try to bury him very quickly so there would be no investigation. So once again, the sheriff didn't do anything for him, to him, but he damn sure tried to cover it up. That's history. That is story after story after story after story. And it isn't just in the South. Because we're in New York here, and I bet you I can point to anybody in this room and tell me about a local story that you have with law enforcement. And we can sit here all day talking about each one of them stories. And it got worse through time, when it was supposed to get better. I always look at all these riots that happened, and these riots started way back, and I can go back further in them. But I only bring this one up because anything in yellow was the first time that the actual riot consisted of the community and police being the main ones that caused that explosion in the communities. And it's important to understand that because there was always riots and things like that. But as time goes by, it gets worse. It gets worse. And it's not always just the police that start these issues. Sometimes it's because there's no trust in the community. Something is said, and the community takes it as being the truth. That explodes it towards the police, and then you have a full-blown riot. So I'm never going to sit up here and say that it's just the police fault. It's not. Trust me, working in law enforcement for 20 years, there's a whole lot of misunderstandings going on both sides. But as you see, as we're moving forward in history, it's just getting worse. It's not getting better. And now here, look at our main ones. Charleston Church Massacre, why did I put that on there? And it's not in yellow. How he was treated, what'd they do? Took him to Burger King. No equity in the community. Once again, the police didn't do anything wrong in that case, even if you took him to Burger King. But you should be doing that to everybody or for everybody. But because of the way you treated that gentleman after what he just did, that gets lumped in here. The community gets worked up about that, right? And you should, because it's not right. Imagine. This. Just read it. Any guesses on how long ago this guy's made the statement? How many years ago? Who said 2? It's like 2 years. This is in Oklahoma, right? I believe. First of all, who has a place where 12 people want to run for sheriff? 2 or 12. But anyways, they're talking about what they used to be able to do to people. That's insane. They're having that conversation now, and how this happens is actually an audio recording for it. As they're having their town meeting, there's a reporter in there, and between the sessions, he just gets up and he walks away. He accidentally leaves his recorder going, didn't realize that he was actually doing it, and walked out. And then these guys started that conversation. And then when he came back and recognized the stuff was on, and then he listened to it, this is exactly what was on there. He immediately just blew it up. So that's how it happened. But I like to find out things. So what I did was I went on, and I looked and I found that in that state, there were 75 reported hangings, which is probably not a true number, but there is 75 on the books, lynchings in that state. And in Marston County itself, or in this county itself, there were 3 confirmed. Now, I don't know if Alan Marston did any of those, but he was the sheriff who would do those. There's 75 in the state and 3 in his county. Basically just told you. And this is now. This is now. A woman not too long ago in Springfield, Illinois. Not Springfield, Ohio, that's where they're eating the dogs and cats. Springfield, Illinois is probably having some kind of mental health breakdown and calls the police that she thinks someone's in her house. She's trying to call for help. And this jackass comes in and basically tells her he's going to shoot her in the face, and he does just that. And he's a man who had worked for 6 different agencies in 4 years. I get the whole thing that we're doing here, and I get that this is, we're all trying to get on the same page with everything we do here. But the bitterness is there. How can you not be tight about that? This lady just lost her life. Why? I don't get it. Maybe what I can tell you is that that county he worked from, where he didn't want to do any procedural justice type of classes. The city police department for that area did, but not the county. Maybe that would have helped, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. All right? So the way that we fix some of this is from within, right? And this doesn't always just become just a black and white issue with officers either, right? Because if some of my brothers that were on the Scorpion team in Memphis would have known their own history, maybe they wouldn't have killed one of their own on the street. So this isn't always just about black and white. Sometimes this is just about understanding your history and where you came from and how to treat others and everything like that. All right? It has to stop. You can't build up any equity with the community. But if you are a law enforcement in here now and you drive a car out there every day, stop and get out and talk to the people, talk to the kids. You have to. It's the only way to get things going. And let's talk about the recruiting and retention of all this and what it looks like. These are excuses. These are the excuses I hear now as a recruiter. This is the excuses I heard from other people in law enforcement. This is what they're saying out here, like, they're not built like we are. Okay, well, let me ask you this. How many people in the room, by raising their hands, got a trophy when you participated in youth sports and didn't win a damn championship? Come on, let me see your hands. Huh? So, you can't complain because we created that. It was my age group that basically, now when I played youth sports, if you didn't win, you got nothing. Period, nothing. And in my age group, all of a sudden, the parents that were my age were at the YMCA and they had a pizza party after the basketball season was over. Pizza party, everybody got trophies. And I was like, what is this? And that's where it started, right? And you got the helicopter parents, you got everything going on. So they're soft. No, we made them that way. So we're going to eat this. We're going to own this. Deal with it. They don't want to work. Yes, they do. But you got to find them. You have to put some effort in. You have to go find them. You just can't stand by idly and say these things. You have to be able to work through this. You just can't say that. Work through it. Help them out. In your police departments. These are the years of importance. This is where you're losing your officers. Years 1 through 8 are very important years. Years 9 through 20 and 20 plus. That's how I break it down. That's the most important time frame that I think exists in a police department. Uncontrollable things and controllable things in your police departments. Year 1 through 8, you're gonna lose people to the state police. They pay a lot of money right now. People are just gonna go there. Young officers are gonna come to your department, they're gonna leave, they're gonna go to that state. All right? Not for me. Some people get in there and understand that it isn't for them. Happens all the time. I put people through 7 months academies to work the street for 2 days and bounce. I just watched a kid in my corrections department do 9 weeks in the police academy, and as soon as he hit that unlock button the first day he was on his own, and I don't know about your jails, but in ours, when you hit the unlock button on your pod, it's wide open. Each cell kind of opens itself. So all you hear is a click, 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 click. Within 15 minutes, he called the sergeant and said, I can't do this. Bye. Bye. So those are just things that are uncontrollable. So you just got to fill another spot. You just got to hustle it up. Homesick. So this is where officers will come to, let's say, a Binghamton Police Department, but they're from Albany, but they're going to take that first job anywhere in the state. They get in, they come to Binghamton, they're there for a year, all of a sudden somebody in the local PD back home says we have a job and they leave. That's going to happen. That's uncontrollable. Too busy or too slow. Some departments are too big for some people. Some department people think it's just too slow, it's not big enough, and they decide to leave. Uncontrollable. Room for advancement. Some departments are just too small, and you're not going to be able to advance through different things that you may want to do, so they may find another department to go to. And some are just trouble. Bad hires. Just not identifying, just not doing proper background checks. 100% the controllable is leadership. Starts from the top down. hold your people responsible. If your departments are in disarray, this is where it starts, period. Do you have a toxic environment? If you do, why? How is your field training program? How is your training? How is your police academies? And I know everybody loves these police academies where you get in there and you yell and scream and talk about people's family members and all this stuff for the first 2 weeks, fine. I think you do need some discipline in there, but we don't need to disrespect people to get them to do this job. I'm telling you, when I first started recruiting for the main part of my job, I used to walk in there and I used to tell everybody about the SWAT team, the CERT team, the K-9 team, all these fancy things. And as I started listening to the younger people in the criminal justice programs, they wanted to know more these days about what type of mental health programs do you have in the police department? What type of community events do you do? So the youth were telling me, like, this whole thing has to look different. So now I don't even talk about any of that stuff. I basically just talk to them about coming in and getting good trainings. Those type of people, they don't want to be disrespected in the first 2 days they're in the police academy, because that's not what they're there for. They're there because they think now they want to help their community. So you don't have to totally get rid of it, but you better learn to adjust or you're still going to be losing people. Promotional fairness. How are you promoting within your departments? Do you just promote because it's gonna get some kind of something for you as a boss, or you're promoting the best person for the job? Fair but not equal discipline. Once again, if you screw up, you should probably be disciplined, but make it fair to everybody. Don't take the same thing for 2 different people because you might not like one person, treat them a little bit differently or a little bit harsher. Show it to be fair. Years 9 through 20, here for the long haul. So people that have made it to that 9 or 10 years now are pretty much going to be there for the rest of their career. They are showing that a young person will leave a job, a pension job, up to about year 8 now. So year 7 or 8, they still will walk away from this job. I think when I came on after year 3, you were like, I'm in this for the next 17, I ain't going nowhere, right? So they look at it a little bit different. So you have to understand that this time frame here, now you know you got it. But what are you going to get? Are they part of the problem? Are they part of the solution? Are they going to come in? Do they want to get out that patrol car and talk to the community? Or do they just want to drive by? Do they want to make people's lives worse? Are they going to do anything? Are they not going to answer their calls? Are they going to call in sick? They'll leave the department short. What are they going to do? And some are just waiting to leave or buying back their time. Because now, you know, they found out that if you've been in the military, you can buy your time back and you can leave a little bit early. So these are the type of people that you're going to get. Your most important losses. These are the 20-plus year people. The people that have been here for a long time and are just being driven out of departments because of the leadership structure. They're experienced. You're going from a 20-plus year person to 0. When he walks out the door, the next person you put in his spot has no idea what they're getting into. 0. Your supervisors, once again. You're going to lose good supervisors. That hurts. And special details. Your special details are all your detective bureaus and things like that, right? When you lose your veteran detectives, when you lose your veteran people that might help the community, you're losing a ton. Here's what makes it a non-issue for your department. How do I lead? Do I see you as a person or just someone who works for me? How are you treating your people inside of that department? Because you should be asking people how they are doing all the time. How is your family? You shouldn't be putting yourself up in an office and never coming out, never having any contact with anybody. What are my politics, values, worldviews, and can I adjust them? You should be able to. Once again, when I write this stuff, I write it with the intention of saying I don't care what your beliefs are, what your politics are, but when you walk in the door, you put the badge on, you hit the street, you better be professional. Leave that shit at home. Period. It doesn't need to be in these police departments. And if you're a boss, you can't sit up there watching, you can't be sitting up there watching Fox News for 15 hours a day and then expecting your officers to go out there and be nice to the community. I'm just saying, you can't take that and turn that into what your department looks like. Are my promotions based on what you can do for me, or who really is the best to carry out the department's mission statement? Once again, plain and simple. The last one you can ask yourself when you look in the mirror if you're the boss: have I been here too damn long? You should be able to look in that mirror and say, yes, I have. I'm going to call it a day. All right? Now, how are we recruiting our people? You have to start being a little bit of a human to start looking at how you recruit. And I've taken some heat from this, and I've had a young lady take some heat from this recently, but I don't really care. My goal with all this, like I said, to come back was to do two things. One, put more minorities in law enforcement jobs, corrections, police, deputies, there, and to identify the people who weren't minorities that would go into the communities and work. All right? I do have a really good understanding that in some cities, especially like in ours, you're going to get some people from rural parts of the community, right? A lot of the people like that want to go into law enforcement. So you may be at a high school, you may have gone all through your high school, and maybe knew one or two black people. Maybe you didn't know any. You're going to take this police job, you're more than likely going to end up on a night shift type of thing, and you're going to end up policing people in a community that probably aren't the best, because most people are sleeping at night and the bad element kind of comes out at night, right? So you have might not have a racist bone in your body coming into the job, but for the next 2 to 3 years, all you're seeing is probably the worst part of that community, right? And in your brain, you're just starting to see everybody like that. So now you're just going to figure that everybody in that community, day or night, is kind of that person. You're building stereotypes up towards that person, and it's just going to happen. The problem is when you decide to come off that night shift per se, or you get onto another shift, and you see that young black male with that nice car, and he's got that hat sideways, and your mindset tells you, because I've been seeing people like this for the last 3 years, and that must be one of him, and you're going to find a reason to pull them over, legit or not, and you're going to treat them like you were treating everybody else. However, that kid's probably a Binghamton University student who isn't going to take your nonsense if it's nonsense. Do you think that could lead to a little bit of a problem with the back and forth between officer and person, that you misidentified because you generalized them? So what I always want to make sure is, if I'm bringing you in, as I'm recruiting you, if you're from one of them areas, is that you're willing to use intellectual thinking when dealing with the community. Understanding, making sound judgment, willing to understand the history, and willing to understand the community you're going to work in. That's all I need to know, right? The second thing for me is, I don't hire anybody without sitting down and having a conversation with them. The worst thing you can do is just look at a piece of paper off of an application or anything like that somebody's turned in, and sit there and make a decision on it. And some of you might have heard this already that have said it, but I'm going to tell you the one specific story I have, and then I'll end. It's a young lady who I got to know a little bit, who wanted to become a police officer in the city of Binghamton. So just initially, the city of Binghamton still doesn't, and at the time didn't have any black female officers. So that was like my main thing. I wanted that bad. I wanted to put a female officer in there. And so she was right on track for me. Everything was good. And then we had a conversation one day, and she just told me a little bit about her history. So I started looking at it. and it wasn't necessarily good. It didn't look good on paper. But having a conversation with her, I was able to kind of understand how things worked for her. So, I think for the police side of the things, it didn't work out because she failed the physical agility test, which, you know, that was on her. She just didn't do the things she needed to do there. But I knew in the corrections department, when I moved on, that I could possibly get in there because the standards were a little bit different. Now, when I first walked into the corrections department up there, the captains, per se, downstairs, they decided who got to get an interview and who didn't. And when I took over, I kind of shut that down immediately, which wasn't well received. Because I said the only one that should be hired or fired is the sheriff and the undersheriff. Everybody should at least get the interview. But I knew she had a little bit of a rough history. But here's what I did. I went to the sheriff and I went to the undersheriff and I said, here's this young lady coming in. Let me explain a little bit about what happens to her. She's 19 years old. And she's from New York City. And she moves up to our area. And she's going there with the intent of just going to college and being a good person. However, she got sidetracked with a few unsavory characters, as life would have you do at 19 years old, right? So, she gets in a domestic one night with her boyfriend, who, when the police show up, decides to take off running and left her there. And right or wrong, maybe understanding that she's 19, might not know everything, and they say to her, can we come in and search your house? And she says, yes, there's nothing in the house, come on in and search. So they go in, and what do they find? A gun. She's 19 years old, she just let the officers into her house, they search and find a gun. Who gets charged with the gun? She gets charged with the gun, right? This dude ran probably because the gun was in the house, right? So mind you, she's 19 years old, she's sitting on a gun charge. She talks to her family, they basically tell her to plead guilty. She pleads guilty to this misdemeanor gun charge. With conversations with her now, and she's absolutely right, she said, if I would have known what I know then, I would have never let them search the house, they didn't have a warrant, and I would have never pled guilty. And I agree with her. As somebody who was an investigator for 15 years and a detective that did that, I'm telling you, she probably would have won that case. Hands down. But she's saddled with this. So, now she's 28, and here's when she's dealing with me. And this young woman has gone from that charge to college, graduating, and working a good security job, and now she's a supervisor at that security job. How the hell can I not give this woman a chance? I get it, and law enforcement, you're supposed to be holier and holier, but that's not what happens, because some of your unholier or holier people are still working in departments. And I only know that because I was in locker rooms where I couldn't put my money on the damn desk over there because if I walked away, it'd be gone because another officer's going to steal it. So don't act like we're all saintly in here. What I'm trying to say is, who am I and who are we not to give her a chance? And we gave her that chance, and she's excelling. She's been there 2 years, and they would love to make her supervisor when she's eligible. Now, that's all well and good. We knew eventually the story would get out about her and people would get all worked up about it. But because we have a sheriff who doesn't put up with nonsense, we just had an officer, a corrections officer, that we fired. We fired him because he smacked a prisoner that was handcuffed and had suffering from mental illness. So we fired him. And they didn't like that. The union didn't like that. The officers didn't like that. And somebody leaked this young lady's story to the social media for me to think that they were just trying to hurt the sheriff and make him look bad because he did hire this female. But the thinking inside that house is still, you're defending a dude who smacked a mentally ill handcuffed inmate, but you don't like the idea that this young lady is in here doing this job. That's insane. I'll never turn away people like that. Because you've changed your life. Plain and simple. So, any questions? So the mentally ill guy was right also.
What do you think the state merit system, the Civil Service Commission, has some role to play in helping local departments diversify?
So civil service is a tricky one. They tend to go back and forth on it, right? I think that the road side should stay the way it is. The correction side has gone to this training and experience process, which is actually kind of neat because there's no more written civil service test. You literally just go on a site and you fill out an application and they give you points. So the older you are, the more jobs you have, the more education you have, you get to come in. That has helped me tremendously to go out there, and I would do a lot of provisional hires. So I'll go out there and find brothers and sisters and good people like that, and I'll bring them in, I'll have a conversation with them. I'll hire before that testing process because it's like every 6 months now. So civil service, it's up and down, man. I mean, I've gone back and forth on it. I love the idea of you having to have college credits to come into this job because it's proven that if you had at least 60 credits or more, the likelihood that you will get in trouble as an officer or do something unsavory in the community or shootings, those numbers all drop with the more education you have. But at the same time, education doesn't mean that you're the end to be the end. I mean, you could still be a bad officer, right? And I'd rather have somebody with a lick of common sense that has no degree doing this job than somebody who has one and treats you like shit. So civil service, I'm up and down on. They're just hard to deal with. Well, I do thank you for coming. This is an important subject. New York State does offer procedural justice classes. However, it's a hard thing to teach. And if your department or yours, or wherever you work would like that, get a hold of me. I have some business cards up here. I'll be glad to come in and do something a lot more in depth than what you've just seen here. Because like I said, just the history itself is going to be about 4 hours. So, thank you for coming.